Hello, and thank you for having me today. My name is Maria Metaweh, and I will be presenting A Picture Worth More Than 1,000 Words, a 30-year review of photo voice representation disparities in psychiatric science. We know that historically marginalized communities, particularly those of racial and ethnic minoritized groups, are more likely to endure disproportionately higher rates of mental illness burden. We also know that photo voice is widely used across disciplines to represent and empower underserved communities, to advocate for personal and community concerns and strengths, and to engage policymakers to legislate structural change. What we do not know, however, informs the scientific questions posed, which are: 1. To what extent are racial and ethnic minoritized groups in the United States suffering from mental illness represented in and benefiting from photo voice research? And 2. To what extent have all three goals of photo voice been applied in the literature, with particular attention to action and policy influence and impact in the United States? And so this review was guided by the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analyses, PRISMA guidelines. Studies with individuals diagnosed with severe mental illness, internalizing disorders, or substance use disorders in the United States were included. Search terms were informed by the DSM-5 and previous research. The search year began in 1992 when PhotoVoice was created. Data extracted included participant social identities of race and ethnicity, economic position, and gender, their psychiatric diagnoses, and the photo voice action and advocacy steps toward policy change. For research question 1, results revealed how major U.S. census-defined minoritized racial and ethnic groups are nearly, if not entirely, absent. Thus, a need for an ethics and social justice approach to collecting and reporting demographic data is urgent. For research question 2, although just below 3/4 of studies initiated the action and advocacy component of photo voice to mobilize collective change, what happens next regarding policy outcomes is not well understood or examined, pointing to need for post-photo voice studies. Future studies are encouraged to use surveys, interviews, and focus groups to explore lessons learned by stakeholders and policymakers, as well as their perceptions of barriers and facilitators to impact. Such future research may elucidate for policymakers more on the sociopolitical determinants of mental health, as photo voice capture these well. Interestingly, results also reveal the emergence of augmented photo voice, described by nearly 1/3 of studies, which supplemented or integrated traditional photo voice with behavioral or therapeutic interventions. A key takeaway from this work is that there's a role for photo voice at all three tiers of a public mental health framework. Specifically, photo voice can be integrated into universal, targeted, and intensive care settings, elevating efforts along the continuum from prevention to intervention. This synergy may help diminish the long-standing science to service gap toward alleviating the significant national mental health burden that's disproportionately impacting racially and ethnically minoritized groups. So I'll speak for a moment now on limitations. Most notably, we excluded externalizing disorders. This was in alignment with a photo voice goal to make invisible lived experiences more visible. Furthermore, this review was limited to the United States, first because of cultural nuances in diagnostic labels and interpretations, and because photo voice policy and advocacy, which remember is the third goal of photo voice, look different across national borders. Altogether, this review of photo voice was the first to assess clinical psychiatric diagnoses and participant demographics of those living with serious mental illnesses, internalizing disorders, and substance use disorders. Although Photovoice is designed to promote inclusion, findings reveal limited participation and missed opportunities in research and care by many groups most vulnerable to higher rates of psychiatric illness. So we hope findings may inspire post-Photovoice impact studies with key stakeholders and policymakers, as well as integration of augmented Photovoice across all three tiers of a public mental health model. Thank you again for having me.